We gather here at St. Mary's to remember and to give thanks for the life of a beloved wife, mother, grandmother, and friend, Thelma Phillips. Thelma has fallen asleep in the peace of Christ. We welcome her body in the church that was for her a special place of friendship and peace. And we surround her with our love and our prayers. Let us pray. God of all consolation, your Son Jesus Christ was moved to tears at the grave of Lazarus, his friend. Look with compassion on Thelma's family and friends in their loss. Give to broken hearts the healing light of hope, and strengthen in us the gift of faith. In Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Our first hymn is Immortal, Invisible, God Only Wise, and all hymns today have been chosen by Thelma herself. Please be seated. I invite those who are paying tribute to come to the lectern to do so in the order as printed in our order of service.
Good morning, everyone. So I've known Sam and Thelma probably for about 20 years or more, and I've spent many happy years with them in their company. Thelma was a people person. She always noticed anyone on their own and introduced them very quickly to others. Their home was always open house, and many meetings and many social events were held there. So Thelma was an active member of the Ramblers, and she and Sam regularly walked with the group locally and on various holidays. They knew the area well. I remember my introduction to one of Thelma's Ramblers holidays. We were in Derbyshire, and the weather was not particularly kind. Out for a walk, I was with Eleanor, and we were a little bit behind the main group, nattering away, when we reached the stream, which was wide and looked fairly deep. I looked at Eleanor and said, "How do we cross this?" She replied quite calmly, "You get wet." I did get wet and received no sympathy from Thelma, who decided that I needed toughening up. However, I survived and even went on more holidays, so that episode failed to deter me. And then we have the Ross Amateur Winemakers. As the name suggests, we used to make wine and compete with it against other clubs. But we eventually decided that our wine was not good enough to enter in competitions, but we wanted to continue to meet. So now we just eat, drink, and socialise every couple of months at one of our local hostelries. Even non-winemakers were allowed to join, and Sam and Thelma were two of the first. You'd think that eating out was uneventful, but it was never plain sailing with Thelma. Something always happened. The funniest being when the chef at the pub where we were eating had walked out earlier that morning, taking with him all the best saucepans and frying pans. Thelma's black speckled egg had come from a frying pan that had seen better days. But then the last 12 months have been different, following Thelma's shock cancer diagnosis. Thelma, Sam and I used to sit on one of the benches on the prospect and put the world to rights and also chat to any passing people. As winter came and it got colder, we brought our cake and coffee and biscuits into this church. We were unsure of official reaction when the Reverend Sean came in, and while we were chatting away, but he didn't mind at all, and he was pleased that the church was being used. So we owe him our gratitude. Often we met at other people's houses, at each other's houses, and Sean sometimes joined us, although I think my cats were more of an attraction than I was. Thelma was a great cat lover. So we all have our own memories of Thelma. She was part of our lives, and we remember those happy days we spent with her, the fun and the laughter, and no one can take away those memories. That's what we will all remember.
Some 38 years ago, my wife and I joined the Ross Betzdorf Twinning Association, of which we're still members. During this time, I had the privilege of being a chairman and leading the group on several trips to Germany. When I first joined, the organisation was quite formal and structured, and even the Ross members barely knew one another, and communication with our German friends was restricted solely to our linked partners with little or no cross-communication. This meant that excursions were an exercise in keeping an eye on our guests, lest they should wander, and encounter someone they did not know and who may or may not talk to them. Quite amazing, really. Now, things are very different, with communication with all members on both sides very inclusive, creating a group of genuine friends, German and English, who know all the participants in the association. Why is this important, you may ask? The answer, very simply, is Thelma. Thelma became the social secretary of the association, and in her own individual style, gradually encouraged members to interact with one another by organising social events such as lunches, bingo, quizzes, skittles, to name but a few. Gradually, the group responded and became an assembly of friends who enjoyed each other's company. This closeness was certainly noticed by our Betzdorf friends, as the interaction continued whenever we met with them, and they have adopted a similar model for their own organisation. They also noticed that the relationships within the association members had changed to become more inclusive, friendlier, and more relaxed, with no fears of ever being left alone with someone they didn't know. The association has become, on both sides, a family of like-minded people who treasure the close work that binds us. This change was very much the work of Thelma, who would not take no for an answer, who would not see anyone sat alone without company, and who would not allow any discord to disturb the group. And one lovely thing you can say about Thelma was that it was never about Thelma. It was always about the cause or the group. Thelma was only small, but she was a force of nature. She knew almost everyone, and if she didn't, she would make it her business to find out. Her local knowledge was second to none, especially in terms of where's the best place to eat. Without her energy and enthusiasm, I doubt whether the Twinning Association would be the organisation it is today. It owes her a great debt of gratitude. Whenever Thelma came to me with an idea for a function or activity, she would always finish by saying, "But after all, you are the chairman, Pat, it's up to you." I rarely had cause to question her request. Now she has a different body to refer to, but somehow I cannot see her addressing God and saying, "But after all, you are God, it's up to you." Thelma, thank you for all that you have given to your family, your friends, and to the town of Ross-on-Wye. You will be missed, and it's been our pleasure to have known you.
This message comes to us direct from the Partnerschaftsverein. I'm not going to bother you with any more German this morning. It's been translated into English most ably by Birgit Weichmann. Tribute to Thelma. Dear Sam, dear mourners, we should be standing here now as members of the committee of the Betzdorf Twinning Association under normal circumstances. But the restrictions related to COVID-19 pandemic has thwarted quite a few plans throughout 2020 and 2021, and that prevents us from being here with you now. We are sorry, but we hope that these written words will reach you in remembrance. Dear Thelma, we are missing you, and your agile way you did things, your energy, your responsiveness, your willingness to help, and great sense of humour. Your contributions to the twinning, which has been so dear to your heart from the very beginning. Your talent for organisation, which was of great help in bringing about the annual meetings of English and German families. Your contribution to a mutual understanding and to forming lasting friendships. In Germany, as yourselves, we say, there is a strong woman behind every strong man. Together with Sam, you have planned and developed ideas for the twinning, fostered the social coherence within the Ross Association, always on the lookout for new members. And I am sure if you are no longer physically here on earth, you will give Sam strength from above. You will give him continued guidance. You and Sam are an entity with complementing natures and with lots of humour and spirit. The Bender family, your long-standing German partners, said that all your meetings were filled with joy and a feeling of togetherness. Thelma, you nurtured various friendships and were a perfect host for many people in your home. You hosted Clemens, the German exchange partner of your son. You had twinning guests every second year at the Whitsuntide weekend. And then with these legendary garden parties on one of these twinning days, with an abundance of delicious food and variety of drinks, special interludes, including short cooking courses, and lots of inspiring talks. Thank you so much for all that. Quite a few people left these parties with seeds and layers of flowers and vegetables from your garden, which you cultivated along with Sam in such a competent and caring way. In the past years, you suffered from quite a few diseases. The back and the knees hurt. You had to undergo eye surgery. All this you bore without lament, and you bravely fought against this. When Sam got seriously ill in spring of 2020, you lovingly supported him during this time and with disease and convalescence. But then, in September 2020, the devastating news came. Cancer had spread in your body. The doctors said it was terminal. To visit you, to comfort you, to embrace you, to stand by your side, all this was thwarted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So we could only express our sympathy through telephone calls, emails, and Zoom meetings. To the very end, you showed interest in everything. You continued to make plans, and you bravely put things in order. You celebrated your wedding anniversary and Sam's 80th birthday. You could enjoy some good days. Last but not least, you bravely fought your cancer, never giving up, and thus set a remarkable example to all of us that every day of life is worth living. Thank you for all that. And there's one thing you should know for certain. You will stay forever in our thoughts and hearts. We are mourning here for Thelma with all friends and acquaintances in Betzdorf, and we express our deep sympathy for her bereaved family, for you, Sam, your children. In deep respect and love, we bow to Thelma. In friendship, we stay by your side, Sam. We will walk on together. Goodbye, Thelma. Auf Wiedersehen.
You can see me. Thelma, free at last. Thelma, always active, always on the go like a minor whirlwind, whether in the house, out and about, or in the garden. She had a motto, do it now. Her entire time with us on this earth, she has always been unfailingly cheerful and someone who's always content with the little things in life, never envious, greedy or grasping, but happy with sunshine, baby kittens, pet lambs, her family and people in general. She was a true people person. She was born at 28 Castle Street in Cardigan, West Wales, the only daughter of Harold and Mary Wilding. She had three brothers, Leslie, to this day. Mum and Dad met on a holiday to Switzerland, organised for former pupils of Ross Grammar School and their friends. Her camera is playing up and Dad offered to try to fix it. They obviously hit it off as they spent the rest of the holiday together and continued to meet on their return home. Was it love at first sight? Probably, actually, as within 3 months they were secretly engaged, something which has only recently come to light, and made the formal announcement at Christmas in 1963. They were married on the 13th of March 1965 and moved into their new bungalow built on a piece of ground given to them by my dad's parents, and they named it Thel Sam. In March 1968, Mum and Dad moved to Rochester, New York for a year as part of Dad's work at Rank Xerox. They could have stayed longer, but by then Keith was on the way and Mum wanted him to be born at home. However, 18 months later, they were back in Rochester on another assignment as part of a dynamic and multifunctional team. They were able to renew their close friendship with an American engineer, Britt Carpenter, and his family. In 1979, they were back in Rochester again, only this time I had joined the trio. Keith and I both attended the Ethel K. Fowle Primary School in Henrietta, a suburb of Rochester, for a year, and Mum loved going into school to help out. It's a small world. Through Mum's interaction with Keith's teacher, it was discovered that she used to visit Symonds Yat on holiday and knew Ross relatively well. Mum and Dad travelled extensively, partly through Dad's work and partly on holidays. In addition to the USA and Canada, they have visited Germany, France, Belgium, Spain, Portugal, Austria, Hong Kong, China, New Zealand, Singapore, Malta, Luxembourg, and numerous Caribbean islands. It was in the Caribbean that, while on a bus, Mum gave up her seat for the consideration and comfort of a box of chickens. I'm not joking. She sat on the engine so the box of chickens could have a more comfortable ride, waggling her legs and laughing uproariously. She also travelled to Russia as she was fascinated by their architecture and thoroughly enjoyed St. Petersburg, although we are unaware of any chicken-related encounters on that particular trip. Wherever we went, Mum's sparkle and good humour shone through. She hated pomposity and treated everyone equally. How many of us have had a present of flowers and chocolates from hotel staff? When they were in a posh hotel in Hong Kong, this is what happened. And when Mum thanked them and asked them why they had done this, they said, "Because you speak to us. You treat us like human beings, not serfs." Mum carried this philosophy into everything she did. Two of her main passions were rambling and Ross Ramblers, and she was also a member of the choristers, and the twinning links between Ross and our twin town in Germany, Betzdorf. With these organisations, she loved bringing everyone together socially. She had an impish sense of humour, which she demonstrated when a Japanese professor of anthropology who was visiting Ross was told by her that he could not go home tomorrow as planned. He was coming home with her. This has not gone unremembered, but most of her antics are memorable. When we flew to Florida together, Mum and I laughed our way across the Atlantic with the aid of a small amount of wine, very small amount of wine, amusing all of our fellow passengers and the cabin crew while Dad sat in front trying to pretend he'd never met us. Very poor parenting on both counts. She had a way with words that most still envy. She was passionate that people were not left out and excluded. If she saw someone on the sideline, she would go out of her way to bring them into the circle. The people in Betzdorf love her to bits, and when they visited, she was always the Ross person their German friends looked for to hug. She introduced our customers singing Auld Lang Syne when the visiting town departed to go home. This got everyone into trouble one year when they sang it in the grounds of the Chase Hotel at 6:30 in the morning and woke up some of the residents. While remorseful, she laughed. She always laughed. She organised many, many lunches for the Ross twinners, and the highlight of the visit to Ross for our German friends was the Sunday afternoon party at our house. These occasions were absolutely brilliant and broke down many of the more formal conventions. She even got the Burgermeister, the mayor of Betzdorf, down on his hands and knees in our hall trying to put together a sheet puzzle they had bought in New Zealand. Our other German guests' eyes were popping out. They often had 50-plus people at these do's, and Mum was in her element. Often they would go on a local ramblers walk and phone Audrey's for fish and chips near the end. They would eat them with tea or coffee in the conservatory. Whilst perfectly comfortable with all things formal, she was much happier with the informal, where people could relax, be themselves, and be at ease. Things did not always go smoothly. For a short time, Mum was an illegal immigrant in Canada. This is yet another example of very poor parenting. Family friends Colin and Anne Gray and their family came to stay with us in America, and we took them to Niagara Falls, about 90 miles away. We crossed into Canada to get the best views of the halls. On our return home, we discovered we did not have Mum's passport. We were okay until we got to US immigration. Then the eagle-eyed immigration officer noticed we had 8 passengers and only 7 passports. Somehow, we had left Mum's passport at home. It took some sweet talking to get through. She excelled at that. But we did have to take the trip to Buffalo a few days later to show them Mum's passport. Who got the blame? I'll give you a clue. His name's my dad. She also charmed us out of a ticket when Dad ran a red light near our Rochester home. Keith was going to the local Cubs group for a badge presentation night. He was in his mate's father's car and we were following. The lead car just made the red light and we followed, only to find a cop was coming out of the crossroad. The siren and red lights went on and Dad was pulled over. Poor parenting, honestly. The cop was not amused, but Mum, putting on her best UK accent, persuaded him we were not master criminals and we didn't make a habit of such things, and he let us go with a severe ticking off. There will never be another Thelma. She led a full life and was lucky that she knew the meaning of being content. She never coveted what others had and took real pleasure, delight even, in others' good fortune. She really was very special. She took the news of her illness with enormous courage and dignity, and she smashed the 3 months prognosis to bits. We used to put up little milestones, Christmas, New Year, her birthday, etc., and she kept on winning and winning. All the time she got a little weaker. But give up? No, never. She insisted on getting out in her beloved garden and pulling out weeds and planting flowers and veg, if only for a few minutes. She fought even when she was bedbound. She would not give in, but in the end, even she had to succumb to this dreadful illness. She made friends all her life, and even during her illness, she made more. The care nurses loved her, and our lovely rector became a personal friend. She finally left us on Sunday, the 5th of September at about 7 o'clock, peacefully, without fuss, and with her family around her. Death came calling. Death came calling today. He came not with a fanfare of trumpets or rolling drums. He came quietly, with stealth. No member of the family noticed his entry into the room, and by the time we had noticed him, it was too late. He took our beloved Thelma quietly by the hand and passed her to God, who led her away to a place where she is not frightened, a place without pain or tears. Perhaps we should be grateful that he released her from her suffering, but he has transferred to us that are left behind a different form of suffering, for now we must find a way to live without her. He never introduced